Braida de Montserver. Now there's another remarkable lady, a Cathar Perfectae. She was born in 16th of August 1175, which makes her actually 20 years younger than that other remarkable lady, Esclarmonde de Foix, that we spoke about last time. Braida de Montserver along with 5 other guides have been highly active, very active, certainly since Dr. Arthur Gurdon wrote his books, We Are One Another, Catharism, Reincarnation, etc. And it was there that I first heard the name Braida de Montserver. But she was quite well known, and especially in France, and in fact a rosarian, a person who breeds roses, it was his son who bred the rose Braida de Montserver, which is illustrated. It's a deep pink and a beautiful rose. She's also written about a number of my books for the simple reason that at the time, previously, she was my primary guide. The thing about guides are that if one is, say, writing poetry, then guides that are more adept at that art form will possibly come on board, whereas somebody else who specialises in some other aspect of Catharism will step aside for the moment or whatever. And that certainly happened to me, and it's happened to others. In Dr. Arthur Gurdon's book, We Are One Another, he talks about when Braider would step aside, and when Gulliver de Castro, for instance, was channeling information down to Miss Mills. And the book We Are One Another is very much about Miss Mills and her memories that came back, revelations, writings, channelings, and also very, very much about Braida de Montserver. I first was involved with Braida de Montserver going back probably 1998, I'd say, around about that time. And my connection waxed and waned over the years. Sometimes it was so strong and I got really good information, and other times I wasn't sure whether it was my imagination or a communique coming from Braider, and I'd have to use a pendulum to say, was that you or was that my imagination? And sometimes it wasn't. I have this illustration, here's the illustration of Braida de Montserver when she was a young lady. And how do I know what she looks like? Well, I had 2 sources because I had never seen her personally myself. But I went to a spirit medium, Susie, and that's going right back again, 1998, 99, around about at that time, I can't remember. And I asked her about my guide And at the time I was wearing this medallion in gold. And Susie said to me, "Where did you get that?" Because Braider, who appeared, and she was wearing the same medallion, but down, hanging off her girdle. And I found out later that those medieval Cathar Perfectae, who were renowned healers, they were given this medallion. It's more or less a diploma in healing. So I explained where I actually got the design from, which was originally from one of Dr. Arthur Gurdon's books. And in fact, we are one another, the same book. Susie, the medium, said when she first appeared, she said, "John, she's brighter than the sun. And she has a tangerine aura, which is so dense, it's very, very hard for me to see her." And she said tangerine auras, from her perspective, are very rare. So that was one occasion. And then Susie did say that she had blonde hair which went down past her waist, which Cathar women, they didn't cut their hair. And sometimes she used to wear bracken, some flowers, bracken in her hair. And she had deep, penetrating blue eyes. So, pretty much every time I went to see Susie, Braider was there. And occasionally, the last time that I actually saw her, Braider was there, Omni de Boers was there, Gulabat de Castro was there, and Bertram Marty was there. But at the time, I didn't know that was the last time I'd ever be to Susie, because she retired soon after that and left the state. So they all popped in, possibly to say goodbye, but I didn't realise that at that session, at that time. On another occasion, I was at the house, my ex-wife, great friends, and my daughter was there. It was the only time I'd actually spoken to my daughter about outer guidance, spirit guides, and specifically my own. And I knew Braida de Montserver was my guide because of Susie and the fact that we were communicating at the time. And but I was under the impression that she appeared, or that she was a little older lady with wrinkled lines towards the end of her years. That's how she appeared to Miss Mills and Dr. Arthur Gurdon's books. So I said to my daughter, "Oh, she's blonde hair, but she's wrinkled and deep blue eyes." And my daughter said, "No, she's not." And my daughter was she was standing about 12 feet away from me. She was standing and I was sitting. And she said, no, she's not. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "She looks like Janet Leigh. She's very beautiful with these deep blue eyes. She's got long blonde hair which goes down past her waist, and she wears dark blue or sometimes dark green these gowns." Well, I said, "How do you know?" Because no one knows. I only just found out that back to Dr. Arthur Gurdon didn't realise until later that they actually wore dark green, and that was to avoid the Inquisition, because normally all the Cathar Perfectae wore black before that. And here's my daughter telling me and what she looks like, Janet Leigh. So I knew what she looked like. But for the purpose of this illustration, which we have here, I did go through all these photographs of Janet Leigh, and I'm looking at on Google. That's about 30 odd photographs. So I went through each of those photographs until they said, "Yes, that's the one there." And I knew she had blonde hair, but I wasn't sure of the style. So then I went through the various other hairstyles until they showed me the hairstyle that she was wearing. So then I had the hairstyle, I knew she was blonde, and I knew she looked like Janet Leigh. Obviously without the lipstick and the thick eye makeup, etc. So that's how we've got Braida de Montserver as a young lady. The other thing is she's smiling and happy because she was a very bright, smiling and happy lady. A little about her. She was well educated, like Esclarmonde. Philosophy, art, music, and then the other things such as embroidery and things like that medieval women practiced. But also she was a great horsewoman and had an affinity with many different types of animals. But she had a bright, sparkling personality. She married, and she had 2 boys and a girl, or 2 girls and a boy, I can't remember. But she became very ill, and it looked as though she was going to die. This was in 1229, and she was at Limoux, and so she received the consolamentum for people who are dying. So those who are going to become a perfecti, or those who are dying, that was the last rites, and they gave you the consolamentum, and you were allowed to die naturally and peacefully. But she recovered, and then she convalesced at the home of Isan the Fanjo, whose name will often crop up if you're reading about medieval Cathars. And then she went on, and she arrived in Montsegur about 1204. I'm not sure about that. And of course, she was burnt with 224 others on the 16th of March, 1244, the massacre of Montsegur. When we used to communicate, a lot of it was just normal stuff, not very deep. And she would just tell me things that are happening, or things to be careful about. But I managed to pick up one of her poems, which was in the book, which I highly recommend, the Cathar Message. And this book, I've mentioned it before, it really goes into medieval Catharism, what they did, the foods, healing, herbs, laying of hands, and also the Cathar philosophy at that time. Now, must always remember that the Cathars all Cathars were originally Catholics, and they were moving from Catholicism and just moving away from all that, and now it's evolved into a universal philosophy that it belongs to anybody and everybody, not just people, not just those who are Christian or Catholics. So, at least I've got something, a poem that she's written, so it's short, and I'll read that for you. It's titled Braider's Song. We will make gardens to please the souls of men, and lakes to nourish them. We will paint pictures for the eyes of men, to lavish beauty on them. We will embroider cloths to take the minds of women to the deep-centered heart of what we ever teach and what we ever preach, the words of light and love. Catharism, in 2 words, children of light and children of love. This is one that she handed to me, and that's in the 21st of December 1999. So it's going back a bit. It's just called change. Change from myth to reality, from blind faith to solid assurance, from rigidity to openness, from rote to revelation, from the bland to the miraculous. Change from myth to reality. Well, that's just change from religion to science, to what's really going on. Not myths that happened and things that were put together a couple of thousand years ago, which were fine, or actually, which were there at the times, and it's never served us too well, I'm afraid, religion. If we look at the history, these days religion has become very bland to what it used to be with the Inquisition and what they did to people who didn't agree with them. From blind faith to solid assurance. Well, blind faith, well then, rather than having to believe about something, it's much better to know. And when you become a Gnostic or understand it, and Catharism and things have happened, for instance, it wouldn't matter what anyone said to me, are there guides or not? I know. I don't have to believe or think. I know. I've been communicating, or they've been communicating with me, probably more like it. So it's past believing, it's knowing. From rigidity to openness. Keep an open mind. Don't be stuck in your beliefs. Your beliefs, whatever one's beliefs are, including mine, are only what we believe is true for now. From the bland to the miraculous. I think this is important. The bland is what happens every day. Politics, work, whatever happens, family business and what have you. This is everyday stuff that happens to pretty much everybody. But if you do follow the path, the Cathar path, and you happen to get on it, and you tread along that path and you take it seriously, the miraculous does happen. It happens over and over again. In fact, Omni Nabors said, in my book, The Cathar Dialogues, I mentioned it, he said, actually, we should believe in miracles every day. He said, but don't pre-formulate them. In other words, accept what they hand down to you or give to you. Expect them. But don't tell them what miracle you happen to want. Don't pre-formulate them. So, it's not poetry, it's good advice. Susie said to me, when I saw her, this is the medium I used to go to, and as I said, Braider was there, but she said to me, because when I told her, we were talking about the Cathars, of which she'd never heard of them, and then she actually saw, because she would actually see the things that actually happened, and that's why I went to her, because the people that she talked about, they're in the room, and she's looking at them, and she can describe them, and they've got these messages going backwards and forwards, and that's why I always pick on spirit mediums and the best that I can find. Susie's out the picture now, but I've got another good one, thankfully, who I'm seeing in the 19th of October. It takes a 2 months booking to see him. 2 months book, 2 months to see him. And here's the same thing. They're all there in the room, the people are there. And he can describe them, so I know. Because I know what they look like, and so therefore I know he's seeing them. But she said, it was the massacre of Montsegur when they burnt everybody. She said it was terrible, terrible. And she told me something which I've never read anywhere in any history book. She said there were 3 children. There were children belonging to Cathars that were also thrown into the flames. They were actually hurled into the flames. And once I was showing her various people, I thought, many of these people have got a Cathar connection. And of course sometimes I wouldn't see the Susie for a couple of years, so she doesn't remember what she said to me 2 years back. But she picked out a photograph. She said, that lady there, That's the woman whose children were thrown into the flames. So there's these group reincarnations going on all around the world at the moment. Let's hope we'll all get interconnected sooner rather than later. But she said, what was Braider, or she calls him Braider, was Braider a horse whisperer? Communicate with horses and so forth. I said, no, I've got no idea. I'm sure she was a great horsewoman because she was in an aristocratic family and they would have been taught to ride horses. And she said, well, what's happening is, as the 225 Cathars are being herded into the flames, which they built up the flames, and this big quadrangle, palisade, and they're herding them into it. The horses, with the knights on them, and they were pushing the Catharism, the horses, because of the flames, were panicking. So Braida de Montserver was going to the horses to calm the horses so they wouldn't trample the Cathars, wouldn't trample on top of the Cathars. So Susie could see this. She was quite worked up at the time, seeing all this, seeing this happening. So there's all these pieces of information that arrive from hither, thither, and yon. But there's not many books. There's probably 30 or 40 books that give you the history of the Cathars, how they arrived in Europe, etc. Some people agree and some people don't agree, but historically it's more or less it's more or less set. So not many books give you any real new information. But the books really are Dr. Arthur Gurdon and his Cathars in Reincarnation, We Are One Another, which talks a lot about Miss Mills and Braider. And it's about 4 or 5 books that he has. I have all but one. And then after that, I believe my books, the Cathar Dialogues, the Cathar Codex, they arrived on the scene. Then, going on, the next one I'm aware of is the Cathar Message, which is really great, and I learned a lot from that about just the daily, how the Cathars went about on a daily basis. And the last one is the Cathar Consolations, and all those books are available on Amazon. Now, Dr. Arthur Gurdon's books are becoming very, very difficult to obtain because most of them are out of print. And I saw the Cathars in Reincarnation, I saw it actually advertised on some place or other, it wasn't Amazon, for $770. So, if you happen to have any of Arthur Gurdon's books and so forth, hang on to them, because they could be worth money in time. Certainly don't throw them out. I've had my ups and downs as a guide, with Braida de Montserver being my guide. And I remember once she was very blunt with me and really took me by surprise. And I was at the time a Chinese herbalist. I'm retired now. I still do Chinese herbs when the occasion arises. But I had a clinic, and sometimes I wasn't sure what formula, because Chinese herbal medicine works on formulas, not on individual herbs. You may add or detract individual herbs, but it works on formulations for various situations, or rather than one specific ailment. It's a holistic, wide-ranging. The formulations are for a range of symptoms that fit within they call it a conformation. Rather than in the West, you're looking for a specific diagnosis, then a specific drug to combat that particular disease, that one disease. Chinese medicine is what they call wide spectrum. It's always treating the whole body, but obviously specifically the organs in question. And on this occasion, I said to her, Braider, I said, oh, dearest Braider, and I always asked permission. Well, I didn't originally, but now I do, because sometimes they don't want to talk about something, and they're not there just for your disposal. It's just simply good manners to ask, do you mind if I ask about such and such? And usually it's yes, but sometimes it's no. And I asked, should I use this formulation or that formulation? And she said to me, you work it out. You're the Chinese herbalist. That was it. Clear as a bell. So that's how I would hear her. And then what happened, my friend Jim, who was Guillaume de Mirepoix, and he wrote on the divorce, he wrote the Cathar dialogues. And as he came into the picture, Braida de Montserver seemed to recede, and I just get spasmodic messages from her. And then what happened, I got highly involved with Henri de Boers for 7 years, and he'd get me up at 3 or 4 in the morning, and he'd channel messages for me, and those essays became the Cathar Consolations. So there's this intercommunications, this toing and throwing, and sometimes it's look, I can only speak for myself, so I haven't always had a smooth run with guides. Other people, like my friend Jim, he saw Henri, he had various things happen to him, and it was actually all quite straightforward, smooth sailing, no problems with communications and so forth. Well, mine's been a bumpy road, but I'm still at it, and some of these people are now dead, so I'm hanging in there. But I do want to say that if you're serious about Catharism, Gnostic Catharism, and you do want to follow that path, I've said it before, you must, at some point, as you go inwards and create time for stillness, a time for quietness, to allow your guides to communicate with you. I've mentioned it before. When I first started communicating seriously with my guides, I used a pendulum to make sure that it was were you actually talking to me then, or something that was really, I found it hard to believe. I would say, are you actually telling me this or telling me that? So I would check it with a pendulum, which I do now on occasions, and I certainly use a pendulum even now, and I say to the guide I'm involved with, do you wish to communicate or talk about such and such at the moment? And usually it's yes, but sometimes it's no. And there's some subjects that they don't, for whatever reason, at this time want to talk about. So Braida de Montserver was for a long time, I'm talking about something like 15 years, an integral part of my life. Now, she slipped more to the background, but she's there. And I've been involved with other guides, but that's another story. So there were certainly a lot of remarkable women who played a vital role, a vital part in medieval Catharism, but certainly Escaramon de Foix who we've spoke about last time, and Braida de Montserver were two outstanding women, and I can speak about them more than others for the simple reason that I've been involved with them. I can speak about these women from the basis that I've had communications with them. Certainly with Braida de Montserver for over quite a number of years. I do hope and wish that you have, that you are connecting with your guide, and that your connections are deepening and becoming more and more meaningful for you. Bye for now. Talk soon.